to operate commercial transport services.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on. It is said that a worker deserves his wages and any denial can be likened to a calamity, such as befalling the Ambrose Ali University, Ekpoma in Edo State. The chairman of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, at the institution, Cyril Onogbosele, said 25 members of the union died in the last 2 years while waiting for payment of their 26 months outstanding salary. Onogbosele also alleged that the institution is facing zero funding, staff victimization, intimidation, and imposition. The ASUU Chairman laments over selective payment of salary, outright denial of salary up to 26 months to many staff members, and non-remittance of deductions from staff salary. Gentlemen, one university, so many issues.
Yes, and that's why ASUU demanded that something should be done about the proliferation of state universities. Some of these states do not have the capacity to fund these state universities sufficiently. They talked about a state in the southeast where even doctors in the teaching hospital of that university were being owed as much as 5 months' salary. That is Abia. I don't know what the situation is like now. If you owe doctors whose duty is to keep people alive, if you owe them 5 months' salary, you are putting the lives of patients at risk, because a doctor who has not been paid for 5 months is demotivated to give his best. I've never seen anything like this. Doctors should never be owed even 1 month's salary.
Yes.
And the religions preach against not paying the wages of a worker. In fact, the Holy Quran says clearly that the worker must be paid his wages before the sweat on his body dries up. That is what the Holy Quran preaches. But we have governors who can't pay people's salaries regularly. How do you set up state universities? Today, some of those state universities, if not for funding from TED Fund, they won't even have enough buildings on campus. TED Fund has been backing them, especially in the area of infrastructure. So there ought to be some form of moratorium about just setting up state universities that you can fund, and they are not even properly managed. Look at what this man is saying, that for a long time, they've not had a governing council. So how do you run a university without a governing council? And this is one of the oldest private universities in our country. Ekpoma in those days used to be reputed for having the best law faculty in the country.
Very correct. Very true.
When I was in the university, they were the best in law. So, but look, that is now the place where people work, teachers will not be paid for 26 months. So a teacher who's been owed salaries for as much as 26 months, how does he feed his family? That's why now 25 of them have died in just under 3 years. And teachers who are being owed salaries, allowances, and all that, they are liable to being corrupt. They will ask their students for money. Even the ones who are being paid regularly in federal institutions, they still will park their cars, they will give their students the key, go and fuel this car for me. Things that were not happening when we were in the university, they happen these days. It's not about how brilliant you are. The teacher will say, take this key, go and fuel my car. Some will sell handouts. just so that they can make ends meet. They do all kinds of things. This is a depressing story. I just can't wrap my head around the anti-workers policies that have been allowed to go on in that university. Why would you even make deductions from people's salaries and not remit to their PFAs? Even some states, it's happening in some states where workers, the deductions from workers' wages were not remitted for so long to the PFAs. It's criminal. No one should be allowed to run an institution in this manner. And I really pity the students. I mean, the teachers who have gone through a lot. I hope that we'll do something about proliferation of state universities. If you've not got the funds, don't start a state university. Because the stories that we hear, no.
Emeka, Ekpoma is one of the oldest state universities. Do you think this is basically about bad leadership?
Well, it's more about confused leadership, not just bad leadership, because education is the base of any modern, sophisticated, and sane society. If you don't prioritize education, what are you prioritizing? What are you prioritizing? I wonder, I mean, look at the governors we have today. Many of them don't seem to take education seriously. And if you cannot run a university, why are you setting up different kinds of universities, college of this, that, why are you setting up universities that tertiary institutions that you cannot run? Now, how can you run an institution without a governing council? The governing council is supposed to help the provost, the vice chancellor, in this case, to think, to plan, to seek endowments, to seek philanthropic donations, to seek areas where the university can make money. But if the vice chancellor is overburdened because there is no governing council, then why won't you have a situation like this? 25 months salary. That is more than 2 years. more than 2 years. So
the other issues are staff victimization, intimidation, imposition.
Yes, you see, these things will fester when you don't have a governing council. People, these issues ought to be brought before the governing council to look into. Because you have situations where some people in certain institutions have become so powerful that the authorities find it difficult to deal with them. So they victimize workers, and they engage in practices that are really shocking and surprising. Imposition, zero funding. It's horrible. It's horrible. And every year you will see these states will make budgets, but they will not give cash backing to these budgets. And then I wonder why Governor Obaseki, who loves to go about and say fancy things, here and there, say fancy things, make fancy declarations, recommendation, the federal government should do this, the economy is this and that and the other. They say charity begins at home. Show clear examples from your state, not advising the federal government that has how many universities? Has a number of universities. It's running. And then you just one state university, you can't run it efficiently. I think Governor Obaseki should start now. He should start today. He should start the process of constituting the governing council of that university and then give the vice chancellor matching orders to ensure that all these issues are dealt with. It's shameful to say the least. I mean, look at the name attached to the university. Professor Ambrose Ali. That's not a small person in the academic world. He was governor of Old Edo State. And this, and the funny thing, Professor Ambrose Ali, he was in the Unity Party of Nigeria then, which prioritized education. and gave books. And I benefited. I got free books from Professor Ambrose Ali's administration. Free books, Masset, all these things. You know, we got a lot of some, you know, people who were in senior classes got free jam forms and all of those things. And then you now don't bother about the legacy, that you are messing up the legacy attached to this great Nigerian's name. The right thing should be done immediately. So,
gentlemen, before we move on, how do we flourish as a nation when the two most critical sectors in our country suffer greatly? Education and health.
Yes, and it's, we have to start by funding education and health sufficiently. Why don't we just start by even meeting the United Nations threshold? Let's even start from there. There are countries of the world who prioritize education so much that if you ask them to mention their 3 priorities, they will tell you education, education, education. Because if we look at countries where researches have helped to make the world a better place, it's all founded on education. We cannot have a situation in which our universities are no longer centers of excellence, centers of quality research. In the past, it wasn't like that. I believe that funding is at the root of this problem, because he talked about selective payment of salary, zero allocation, zero funding and all that. If we improve funding, they will pay salaries regularly. There will be enough money set aside for research, because that's what the university is all about, you know. So, and some of these researches, the products of these researches will make our country better, will make our world better. If, for example, one of the big agricultural universities in our country can come up with how best to preserve yam, for example, Nigeria can make a lot of money, because we don't know how to preserve yam. When the former minister of Agric, AAUA, could try to export yam the other day, before the containers got to destination, they had all become rotten. And of course, the problems in our ports, the needless searches by the multiple agencies of government, EFCC, immigration, everybody wants to be at the ports
the same thing.
For the purpose of extortion, nothing else that I see. It takes weeks to check and check and check and then pass cargo fit for export. Yam especially, for example. In Ghana, it takes just 3 days. People who are wise have made up their minds to pass their cargo through the ports of our neighbors. Because the encumbrances that they face here, the bureaucracies that they face here, they are not there in Benin Republic, for example. They are more efficiently run ports than ours. So there is a lot. We have to improve funding of health. Funding is key to turning things around, both in health and education. And then we need people with bright ideas who can come up with ideas that will turn around the situation.
All right.
Do you know let me just quickly chip in something. What Jide said about yams. I understand that some of the yams that Ghana is reputed to be exporting actually come from Nigeria. But they are able to package them well for export. Yams from Nigeria, I think they're taken from Nigeria, cultivated there, and packaged for export. How are we doing to ourselves?
We'll continue to waste time before we clear those goods. This problem will continue.
Yes.
If they can do it in 3 days. Yam doesn't like humidity.
Yes.
Doesn't like heat at all. So you need to do it quickly. Let us get to that place. And how, for example, look at Kenya, look at Ethiopia. They export flowers. How are they able to do it? They export fresh tomatoes. As they are harvesting those things, the airports, the cargo airports are there. They take them abroad. They freight them abroad quickly.
We were exporting flowers before, up until Buhari's military regime.
Gentlemen, we need to move on.